The bus lot was supposed to be empty. Officer Ryan Caldwell stood beside Unit 47, the yellow beast still ticking with residual heat from its afternoon route. The sun hung low over the depot, casting long shadows across rows of parked buses. Everything was quiet, too quiet. His canine partner, a Belgian Malinois named Copper, pressed his nose against the rear emergency door of the bus, tail rigid, ears pinned forward. Ryan checked his watch. 6:47 p.m. The last driver had clocked out 20 minutes ago. The lot supervisor had done his final walkthrough. The gates were locked. Protocol said the buses were clear. But Copper didn't lie. The dog circled back, pawed at the door, then looked up at Ryan with eyes that said everything his voice couldn't. Something was wrong. Something was inside. Ryan's hand moved instinctively to his radio, but he hesitated. What was he supposed to report? A hunch? A dog acting strange? He'd been with the transit police for 6 years, partnered with Copper for 3. The dog had never been wrong, not once. But what he uncovered inside that bus wasn't a threat. It was a tragedy waiting to happen. The Riverside School District Transportation Hub sat on the edge of town, bordered by a stretch of woods on one side and a chain-link fence on the other. 42 buses lined up in neat rows each night, their yellow paint dulled by dust and exhaust. The place smelled like diesel and rubber, a scent that clung to everything: the pavement, the air, even the uniforms of the drivers who spent their days navigating suburban streets and country roads. Ryan had started his evening shift an hour earlier, just as the last of the daylight drivers were finishing their paperwork. He'd walked the perimeter with Copper, checked the gates, exchanged a few words with the lot supervisor, a gruff man named Eddie, who'd been working there longer than Ryan had been alive. Eddie had waved him off, muttering something about overtime and a grandkid's birthday party, before climbing into his truck and rumbling out through the main gate. Now it was just Ryan, Copper, and the hum of the overhead lights starting to flicker on. Copper was a 4-year-old Malinois with a rust-colored coat and a work ethic that bordered on obsessive. He'd been trained in narcotics detection, but his real gift was his nose and his instinct. Ryan had learned to trust that instinct more than his own eyes. In a world full of distractions and assumptions, Copper cut through the noise. He didn't think, he just knew. They'd been partners since Copper graduated from the Canine Academy in Pennsylvania. Ryan had driven 6 hours to pick him up, and on the ride home the dog had slept with his head on Ryan's lap, paws twitching in dreams Ryan could only guess at. Since then, they'd worked together 5 nights a week, patrolling the depot, checking buses for contraband, responding to calls about suspicious activity. It wasn't glamorous work, but it mattered. Kids rode these buses. Families trusted them. Ryan believed in that trust. The bond between them had formed slowly at first. Copper had been wary, trained by someone else, handed off like equipment, but Ryan had taken his time. He'd spent hours with the dog after shifts, throwing tennis balls in empty parking lots, practicing commands in his backyard, sleeping on the couch with Copper curled at his feet. He'd learned the dog's signals, the way his ears twitched when he caught a scent, the way his tail stiffened when something felt wrong, the low rumble in his chest that meant danger. Ryan's wife Sarah had been skeptical at first. She'd worried about bringing a working dog into their home, about the liability, the aggression training, the unpredictability. But Copper had won her over within a week. The dog was gentle with their daughter, Maya, who was 5 and fearless. She'd parade around the house with Copper following behind her like a guardian, his massive head level with her shoulder, his eyes tracking her every move. Sarah had taken a photo once. Maya sprawled on the living room floor, coloring, with Copper lying beside her, his chin resting on his paws, watching. Ryan kept that photo in his wallet. It reminded him why he did this work, why it mattered. He walked closer to Unit 47, boots crunching on gravel. Copper was still fixated on the rear door, his breath fogging the glass. Ryan glanced through the window. The bus looked empty. Rows of green vinyl seats, scuffed floors, a forgotten backpack wedged under one of the benches. Nothing unusual, but Copper whined, a low, insistent sound that made Ryan's chest tighten. "What is it, boy?" Ryan crouched beside the dog, running a hand down his back. Copper didn't budge. His focus was absolute. Ryan thought back to the training sessions they'd done together. The instructors had emphasized one thing above all else: trust your dog. A canine's senses were sharper than any technology, more reliable than any protocol. When a dog alerted, there was always a reason. Always. Ryan stood, pulled out his flashlight, and tested the door handle. Locked. He circled around to the front, climbed the steps, and unlocked the driver's door with his master key. The hinges groaned as he pushed it open. The interior smelled like old vinyl and the faint sweetness of spilled juice boxes. "Hello?" his voice echoed. No answer. Copper bounded up the steps behind him, nails clicking on the rubber mat. The dog moved down the aisle, nose sweeping left and right, until he stopped near the middle of the bus. He sat, stared, didn't move. Ryan followed. "What have you got?" Copper's gaze was locked on the floor near the heater vents that ran along the sides of the bus. Ryan knelt, shining his flashlight into the narrow gap between the seat and the wall panel. That's when he saw it. A small sneaker, child-sized, blue with yellow laces. And it wasn't empty. Ryan's breath caught. He angled the flashlight lower, and the beam revealed more. A leg, bent at an awkward angle. A small body, curled into the space beneath the seat, wedged into the shadows where no one would think to look. Jesus. The word came out as a whisper. Ryan's training kicked in. He keyed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I need EMS to the Riverside Bus Depot immediately. I have a child, unresponsive, inside Unit 47. Repeat, child located inside parked school bus." The voice on the other end crackled with urgency. "Copy that, Unit 12. Can you confirm vitals?" Ryan didn't answer yet. He dropped to his knees, reaching carefully into the gap. His fingers found a wrist, cold, but not lifeless. He felt for a pulse. There. Faint. Too faint. But there. Pulse is weak. Child appears unconscious. "I'm going to attempt extraction." "Negative, Unit 12. Wait for EMS. Do not move the child." But Ryan couldn't wait. The space was too tight. The air inside the bus was stifling even with the doors open. How long had this kid been here? Hours. Since the afternoon route. He looked at Copper. The dog sat perfectly still, watching, trusting. Ryan made a decision. He gripped the seat frame and pulled, trying to create more space. The bolts groaned but held. He reached in again, this time getting both hands under the child's shoulders. Slowly, carefully, he began to slide the small body out from beneath the seat. A boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old. Dark hair matted with sweat, skin pale, lips dry. He wore a red t-shirt with a cartoon dinosaur on the front, jeans, and one blue sneaker. The other was still somewhere in the gap. Ryan laid him gently on the floor of the aisle, tilted his head back, checked his airway. Breathing. Shallow but breathing. "Come on, kid. Stay with me." In the distance, sirens wailed. Ryan kept his fingers on the boy's pulse, counting beats, monitoring the shallow rise and fall of his chest. The kid's skin felt like paper, dry and hot to the touch. Ryan had seen heat stroke before, construction workers who'd pushed too hard, elderly residents who'd lost power during summer blackouts, but never a child, never someone this small. He grabbed a water bottle from his belt, unscrewed the cap, and wet his fingers. He dabbed the moisture across the boy's forehead, his temples, the back of his neck. It wasn't much, but it was something. Copper moved closer, sniffing the boy's hand. The dog's nose was gentle, investigative. Then Copper looked up at Ryan, and in that moment Ryan saw something he'd never seen before in his partner's eyes. Fear. The sirens grew louder. Red and blue lights strobed across the windows of the bus. Ryan heard doors slamming, voices shouting, footsteps pounding across the gravel. "In here," Ryan called out. "Unit 47. The first paramedic through the door was a tall man with close-cropped hair and quick hands. He knelt beside the boy, fingers already moving to check the pulse Ryan had been monitoring. Behind him came another medic carrying a trauma bag, then a third with a gurney. "How long?" the first paramedic asked. "Unknown. At least 2 hours, maybe more." The paramedic's jaw tightened. He pulled out a pen light, checked the boy's pupils. Pupils are reactive. "That's good. Core temp is going to be sky high though." Ryan stepped back, giving them room to work. He watched as they moved with practiced efficiency. Oxygen mask, IV line, portable monitor beeping to life. The numbers on the screen told a story Ryan didn't want to read. The paramedics worked in near silence, their movements choreographed by years of training and countless emergencies. Marissa, the woman Ryan recognized from previous calls, arrived with cold packs and began placing them strategically around the boy's body, neck, armpits, groin, the areas where major blood vessels ran close to the surface. "Core temp is 104.2, one of the medics announced. "We need to get him cooled down fast." "Starting saline drip," another said, adjusting the IV bag. Ryan watched the boy's face. His eyelids fluttered but didn't open. His lips moved soundlessly. forming words no one could hear. Ryan leaned closer, scared. The whisper was barely audible. Dark. "Hey, buddy," Ryan said softly. "You're safe now. We've got you." The boy's eyes opened for just a moment, unfocused, confused. Then they closed again. Marissa looked up at Ryan. "You found him just in time. Another hour, and we'd be having a very different conversation." The weight of those words settled over Ryan like a blanket. Another hour. 60 minutes. The difference between a rescue and a recovery. "Let's move," Marissa said. "We need to get him to County General. Pediatric ICU is standing by." They lifted the boy onto the gurney, secured the straps, and began rolling him toward the door. Ryan followed, Copper at his heels. Outside, the ambulance sat with its rear doors open, a rectangle of fluorescent light in the gathering darkness. As they loaded the gurney, Ryan caught sight of something tucked into the boy's pocket. A small plastic dinosaur, green and worn from handling. A toy, a comfort object, something that had been with him during those terrifying hours alone in the heat. The doors closed. The ambulance pulled away, siren cutting through the evening air. Ryan stood in the empty lot, surrounded by silent buses and the ghosts of what could have been. Copper pressed against his leg, solid and warm. "Good boy," Ryan said again, his voice rough. "You saved his life." He pulled out his phone and dialed dispatch. "I need the incident report for Unit 47 today. Any complaints, any unusual activity, anything at all?" While he waited, Ryan walked back to the bus. The interior looked different now, contaminated by what had happened there. The seats that had seemed ordinary an hour ago now felt sinister. One of them had nearly become a tomb. He moved slowly down the aisle, examining every detail. The backpack he'd noticed earlier belonged to someone else, a teenage girl, judging by the band patches sewn onto the fabric. He checked the pockets. Books, a calculator, nothing helpful. Near the middle of the bus, where the boy had been hiding, Ryan found more clues. A juice box, empty and crushed. A granola bar wrapper. The boy had brought supplies with him. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. Ryan's phone buzzed. A text from dispatch. "No incidents reported for Unit 47. Driver completed route without issue. All students accounted for at final check, but they hadn't been accounted for. One of them had stayed behind, hidden, waiting for something, or hiding from something." Ryan knelt beside the seat again, shining his flashlight into the gap where the boy had been wedged. The space was impossibly small, barely wide enough for a child's body. To fit there, the boy would have had to make himself as small as possible, arms tucked, knees bent, body compressed into the narrowest configuration. It must have been terrifying. Ryan stood, moved to the front of the bus, and examined the driver's area. A clipboard hung from a hook beside the steering wheel, the daily route sheet. He scanned the list of stops, the names of students, the times recorded in neat handwriting. Stop 6, Maple Street. 3 students scheduled for pickup and drop-off. Their names were checked off. Sarah Mitchell, Emma Chen, Thomas Hayes, Thomas Hayes. Ryan pulled the crumpled drawing from his pocket and looked at the name scrawled at the bottom. Tommy, short for Thomas. He had a full name now. Thomas Hayes. 7 years old, 2nd grade. Home address on Maple Street. Ryan photographed the route sheet, then called Eddie. "Eddie, I need you to come back to the depot. What's wrong? Did something else happen? I need to review the security footage. All of it. From this afternoon." Eddie's voice tightened. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Ryan stepped off the bus and surveyed the lot. The other buses sat in their assigned spaces, oblivious machines waiting for tomorrow's routes. How many other children had hidden on these buses? How many close calls had there been that no one knew about? The thought made Ryan's stomach turn. Copper whined, drawing Ryan's attention. The dog was staring at something near the front wheel of Unit 47. Ryan walked over, crouched down, and found what Copper had spotted. A small bracelet, plastic beads spelling out a name. Tommy. Ryan picked it up carefully. The elastic was stretched, broken. It must have fallen off during the struggle to get into the hiding spot, or during the extraction. He slipped it into an evidence bag, though he wasn't sure yet if this was a crime scene or just a tragic accident. The line between the two felt blurry. Eddie's truck pulled into the lot, headlights cutting through the dusk. The older man climbed out, his face creased with worry. "Show me what you found," Eddie said. Ryan led him to the bus, explained everything. Eddie listened in silence, his expression growing darker with each detail. "I checked that bus," Eddie said finally. "I walked the whole aisle. I looked under the seats. I believe you, but Tommy was small enough and tucked far enough back that you could have missed him. especially if you were moving quickly. Eddie's hands shook. I've been doing this job for 23 years. I've never missed a kid. Never. There's a first time for everything, Ryan said gently. Let's look at the footage. They walked to the security office, a small building near the main gate. Inside, a bank of monitors displayed feeds from cameras positioned throughout the lot. Eddie pulled up the afternoon footage and began scrubbing through it. There, Ryan said, pointing at the screen. Unit 47, what time did it arrive? 4:37, Eddie said, reading the timestamp. They watched as the bus pulled into its space. The door opened. The driver, Margaret Harris, stepped out, clipboard in hand. She walked around the vehicle, checking the tires, the mirrors, the emergency exits. Then she climbed back inside. She's doing her final check, Eddie said. The camera angle didn't show the interior clearly, but they could see Margaret's silhouette moving down the aisle. She paused at several seats, bent down, straightened up. The whole process took less than 3 minutes. Then she stepped off the bus, locked the doors, and walked toward the office. She checked, Eddie said. You see, she did her job. But she missed him, Ryan said. Just like you did. They watched the footage for another hour, tracking Margaret's movements, Eddie's inspection rounds, Ryan's arrival at 6 o'clock. The bus sat undisturbed the entire time, a yellow coffin baking in the afternoon sun, until Copper found what everyone else had missed. Ryan rubbed his eyes, exhaustion settling into his bones. I need to talk to the driver, and I need to talk to Tommy's parents. Jennifer and Mark Hayes, Eddie said, pulling up the contact information. Good people. Mark works at the hardware store downtown. Jennifer's a nurse at County General. Ryan felt a chill. Jennifer Hayes was a nurse at the same hospital where her son was now fighting for his life. She might even know the doctors treating him. Call them, Ryan said. Tell them I'm on my way. County General Hospital's pediatric wing smelled like antiseptic and anxiety. Ryan walked through the corridors with Copper at his side, the dog's presence drawing curious glances from staff and visitors. Service dogs weren't uncommon in hospitals, but a police K9 was unusual enough to warrant attention. Room 214 was at the end of the hall. Through the window, Ryan could see a woman sitting beside a hospital bed, her head bowed, her hand clasping a smaller hand that lay motionless on the white sheets. Ryan knocked softly. The woman looked up. Her eyes were red, her face pale. She was maybe 35, with dark hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail and scrubs that suggested she'd come straight from work. Mrs. Hayes? She nodded, stood, and wiped her eyes. Are you Officer Caldwell? I am, and this is Copper. He's the one who found Tommy. Jennifer Hayes looked down at the dog, and something in her expression cracked. She knelt, reached out tentatively, and Copper stepped forward to meet her hand. She touched his head gently, as if he were made of glass. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for finding my baby. Ryan gave her a moment, then asked, how is he? Stable. They got his temperature down. The doctor said he was lucky. Another hour and... She couldn't finish. Ryan glanced at the bed. Tommy looked small against the white sheets, an IV in his arm, monitors beeping softly beside him. His eyes were closed, but his breathing was steady, strong. Mrs. Hayes, I need to ask you some questions. About Tommy. About what happened today. She nodded, wiped her eyes again and sat down. Ryan pulled up a chair across from her. Did Tommy say anything about not wanting to go to school? Or not wanting to ride the bus? Jennifer's jaw tightened. Yes, he's been saying that for weeks, since the beginning of October. Did he tell you why? Not at first. I thought it was just normal kid stuff. Maybe he didn't want to wake up early, or he missed playing with his toys. But then last week, he came home crying. He said some of the older kids on the bus were being mean to him. Did he say who? No, I asked, but he wouldn't tell me. He said he didn't want to be a snitch. I told him I'd talk to the school, but he begged me not to. He said it would make things worse. Ryan's chest tightened. It was a familiar story, too familiar. Kids being bullied, too afraid to speak up, too worried about retaliation. What did you do? I talked to his teacher. She said Tommy was quiet in class, but seemed fine. No signs of trouble. I thought maybe I was overreacting. Jennifer's voice broke. I should have pushed harder. I should have... This isn't your fault, Ryan said firmly. You were trying to protect him. But sometimes kids hide things from us. They don't want to worry their parents. They think they can handle it themselves. Jennifer looked at her son. He tried to handle it by hiding on a bus, by risking his life to avoid whatever he was afraid of. I think he didn't mean to stay on the bus that long. I think he was trying to wait until the other kids got off at their stops. But then the driver did her check and didn't see him. and by the time he realized he was stuck, it was too late. Why didn't he yell? Why didn't he pound on the windows? I don't know. Maybe he was scared of getting in trouble. Maybe he thought he could wait it out. Kids don't always think rationally when they're afraid. The door opened, and a doctor entered. She was young, with kind eyes and a stethoscope draped around her neck. She smiled at Jennifer. "He's doing much better. We're going to keep him overnight for observation, but his vitals are strong. He should make a full recovery." Jennifer sagged with relief. "Can he hear me? Can he understand what's happening?" "He's been drifting in and out of consciousness. The sedatives we gave him are wearing off. He should wake up fully within the next hour or two." Ryan stood. "I'll let you have some time with him. But Mrs. Hayes, I'm going to need to talk to Tommy when he wakes up. I need to understand what happened today, who he was afraid of." Jennifer nodded. "I'll call you." Ryan left the room, Copper following close behind. In the hallway, he pulled out his phone and called Margaret Harris. She answered on the first ring. "Officer Caldwell?" "Margaret, I need you to think back to this afternoon, to the kids who got off at Maple Street. Stop number 6. I already told you, 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy." "The boy, are you sure he got off?" A long pause. I thought I saw him get off, but it was hot and there were kids moving around, and I was watching the girls more closely because they were younger. I saw them reach the curb and I assumed the boy was with them." "What did the boy look like?" "Tall, dark hair. He was wearing a blue backpack." Ryan's stomach sank. "Margaret, Tommy Hayes is 7 years old. Blonde hair. Small for his age. He was wearing a red dinosaur shirt." That's not the boy I saw." "Then who did you see?" "I don't know. Maybe one of the older kids was walking with the girls. Maybe I got confused." "Oh God, I got confused." Ryan heard her voice crack, heard the sound of crying. "Margaret, I need you to meet me at the school tomorrow morning. We're going to figure out exactly what happened, who was on that bus, who got off where, and why Tommy felt like he needed to hide." He ended the call and stood in the quiet hallway, processing what he'd learned. Tommy hadn't been invisible. He'd been deliberate. He'd hidden because he was scared, and whatever he was scared of had been powerful enough to make him risk his life. Ryan thought about his daughter, Maya, about the trust she placed in adults to keep her safe, about how fragile that trust was. He looked down at Copper. "We're going to find out who scared him, and we're going to make sure it doesn't happen again." The dog's tail wagged once. A promise. The next morning, Ryan stood in the parking lot of Riverside Elementary School, watching as yellow buses pulled up one by one to discharge their passengers. Kids poured out, backpacks bouncing, voices rising in excited chatter. Teachers stood near the entrance, greeting students, checking names off lists. Copper sat beside Ryan, alert and watchful. Margaret Harris arrived at 7:45, her face drawn and tired. She'd barely slept, Ryan could tell. Neither had he. "Unit 47 is parked over there," she said, pointing to a bus at the far end of the lot. They walked over together. The bus looked innocuous in the morning light, just another vehicle in a long line of identical yellow boxes. But Ryan couldn't see it that way anymore. He saw it as the place where a 7-year-old boy had nearly died. "Walk me through the afternoon route," Ryan said. "Every stop, every kid." Margaret pulled out her clipboard and began reading names. Ryan took notes, cross-referencing with the student roster Eddie had provided. They went through each stop methodically, identifying which children got on where, which ones got off where. When they reached stop 6, Maple Street, Margaret's voice wavered. Sarah Mitchell, Emma Chen, Thomas Hayes, all 3 were on the bus. All 3 were supposed to get off here, but only 2 got off, Ryan said. Sarah and Emma. "I thought I saw 3 kids walk away from the bus, but now I'm not sure. Maybe I only saw 2 and convinced myself there were 3 because that's what I expected to see." Ryan looked at the list. "Who else was on the bus after Maple Street?" Margaret scanned her notes. 12 kids. Stops 7 through 12. "Any of them give you trouble? Any incidents?" "Dylan Kruger, stop 9. He's always pushing boundaries, talking back, bothering other kids." Ryan had already flagged Dylan's name. "Tell me about him." "He's 9, big for his age. He sits in the back and thinks he runs the bus. I've had to discipline him several times for being rough with younger kids." "Has he ever bothered Tommy specifically?" "I don't know. I try to keep an eye on everyone, but I can't see everything that happens back there. Kids can be cruel when adults aren't watching." Ryan made a note to interview Dylan. "What about the other kids? Anyone else stand out?" Margaret shook her head. "They're all good kids for the most part. Loud sometimes, but not mean." Ryan thanked her and sent her on her way. Then he walked to the school's main office and asked to speak with the principal. Dr. Carla Martinez was a woman in her 50s with steel grey hair and sharp eyes. She listened to Ryan's explanation with growing concern. "Tommy Hayes," she said, pulling up his file on her computer. "Good student, quiet, no behavioral issues. His teachers have nothing but positive things to say about him. Has he reported any bullying?" "Not to my knowledge, but that doesn't mean it hasn't happened. Kids don't always come forward. I need to speak with his teacher, and I need to interview some of the other kids who ride Unit 47. Dr. Martinez nodded. "I'll arrange it. But Officer Caldwell, I want to be clear. If there's bullying happening on our buses, we take that very seriously. We have a zero-tolerance policy." "Then why did Tommy feel like he had to hide?" Dr. Martinez had no answer. Ryan spent the rest of the morning interviewing students. Most of them were helpful, eager to talk to a police officer and his dog. They petted Copper, asked questions about police work, and answered Ryan's questions about the bus ride. But when it came to Dylan Kruger, the tone shifted. Dylan was brought to the principal's office with his parents. He was a big kid, tall and broad-shouldered, with a defiant expression and crossed arms. His father looked annoyed. His mother looked worried. "Dylan," Ryan said gently, "I'm not here to get you in trouble. I just need to understand what happened on the bus yesterday." "Nothing happened," Dylan said. "I rode the bus like I always do." "Did you talk to Tommy Hayes?" "Who?" "The boy who sits near the front. Smaller kid, 2nd grade. Dylan shrugged. "I don't know who that is." "Dylan," his mother said sharply, "answer the question." "I don't pay attention to little kids," Dylan said. "They're annoying." Ryan leaned forward. "Tommy was found on Unit 47 last night. He'd been hiding under a seat for over 2 hours. He almost died from heat stroke. I think he was hiding because he was scared of someone on that bus." Dylan's expression flickered, just for a moment. Surprise, or maybe guilt. "I didn't do anything," he said quickly. "I swear." "Dylan, if you know something, now is the time to tell me. A boy almost died." Dylan looked at his parents, then at Ryan. "Okay, fine. Maybe I said some stuff to him. But it was just joking around. I didn't mean anything by it." "What kind of stuff?" "I don't know, just stuff like he's small and he acts like a baby. I told him he should sit in the front with the kindergartners." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Anything else?" Dylan shifted uncomfortably. "I might have said that if he didn't toughen up, the older kids were going to make his life miserable." "Did you threaten him?" "No, I was just messing with him. Everyone gets teased. It's part of growing up." Ryan looked at Dylan's parents. They both looked uncomfortable now, realizing the weight of what their son had done. "Mr. and Mrs. Kruger, I'm going to recommend that Dylan be enrolled in a peer mediation program. He needs to understand the impact his words have on other people, and he needs to learn that joking around can have serious consequences." Dylan's father started to protest, but his mother cut him off. "We'll do whatever it takes. We had no idea this was happening." Ryan stood. "Tommy Hayes is lucky to be alive. If my dog hadn't found him, we'd be having a very different conversation right now. I hope your son understands that." He left the office with Copper and walked back to his car. The weight of the investigation pressed down on him. This wasn't a simple case of bullying. It was a systemic failure. Margaret had missed Tommy. Eddie had missed Tommy. The school hadn't noticed the signs, and Tommy's parents had been too afraid to push harder. Everyone had failed, and a 7-year-old boy had nearly paid the price. Ryan's phone rang. It was Jennifer Hayes. "Officer Caldwell, Tommy's awake. He's asking for you. And for Copper." Ryan drove to the hospital, Copper in the passenger seat. When they arrived at room 214, Tommy was sitting up in bed, a juice box in one hand and a small smile on his face. "Is that the dog?" he asked. Ryan nodded. "This is Copper. He's the one who found you." Tommy held out his hand, and Copper approached slowly, sniffing the boy's fingers. Then the dog licked his palm and Tommy laughed. "He's a good dog," Tommy said. "The best," Ryan agreed. He sat down beside the bed. "Tommy, can you tell me what happened yesterday? Why you hid on the bus?" Tommy's smile faded. He looked at his mother, then back at Ryan. "There's a boy on the bus. Dylan. He's mean. He said if I got off at my stop, he was going to follow me home and beat me up. So I hid. I thought if I waited until he got off, I'd be safe. But you got stuck," Ryan said gently. Tommy nodded. "I couldn't get out from under the seat. And then the bus stopped moving, and I tried to yell, but no one heard me. And it got really hot. I was so scared." Jennifer Hayes pulled her son close, tears streaming down her face. Ryan reached out and squeezed Tommy's shoulder. "You're safe now. And I promise you, Dylan isn't going to bother you anymore. Neither is anyone else." Tommy looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes. "Thank you for finding me." "Thank Copper," Ryan said. "He's the hero." Tommy wrapped his arms around the dog's neck, and Copper stood perfectly still, as if he understood the importance of the moment. The weeks following Tommy's rescue brought sweeping changes to the Riverside School District. The school board held an emergency meeting, and parents packed the auditorium, demanding answers and accountability. Ryan attended, standing at the back with Copper, watching as the community grappled with what had happened. Dr. Martinez presented a comprehensive safety overhaul. Every bus would be equipped with interior cameras that fed directly to a monitoring station at the depot. Drivers would be required to complete a two-person verification before parking each bus. One driver check, one supervisor confirmation. Panic buttons would be installed in every row of seats, bright red and easy to reach. And most importantly, a mandatory anti-bullying program would be implemented district-wide, with anonymous reporting and strict consequences for offenders. Margaret Harris attended the meeting but didn't speak. She sat in the third row, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes downcast. After the meeting ended, she approached Ryan. "I'm retiring," she said quietly. "I can't keep doing this. Every time I close my eyes, I see that little boy under the seat, and I think about how I walked right past him." Ryan understood. "You're not a bad person, Margaret. You made a mistake. We all did. But my mistake almost cost a child his life, and you'll carry that with you. But you can also learn from it. You can help make sure it never happens again." Margaret wiped her eyes. "I'm going to volunteer for the new safety program, training drivers, making sure they know what to look for." Ryan nodded. "That's good, that's how you make it right." Eddie, the lot supervisor, went through a similar journey. He threw himself into the new protocols, becoming almost obsessive about checking every bus, every night. He installed a checklist system with photographs and timestamps, creating a digital record of every inspection. Ryan sometimes found him in the depot late at night, walking the rows of buses with a flashlight, checking and rechecking. "You don't have to do this every night," Ryan told him once. "Yes, I do," Eddie said. "I missed a kid. I'll never miss one again." Dylan Kruger and his parents went through the peer mediation program. Dylan wrote a letter of apology to Tommy, though they were kept apart for safety reasons. The letter was simple but sincere. "I'm sorry I was mean to you. I didn't know you were so scared. I'll never do that again." Tommy kept the letter in his backpack, along with the drawing he'd made of Copper. Jennifer Hayes quit her job at the hospital and took a position at a clinic closer to Tommy's school. She wanted to be nearby, just in case. She attended every school board meeting, becoming an advocate for student safety and mental health resources. Mark Hayes, Tommy's father, started a support group for parents of bullied children. The group met twice a month in the library, providing a space for families to share their experiences and support one another. And Tommy himself slowly began to heal. He returned to school after 2 weeks of rest and therapy. A counselor worked with him 3 times a week, helping him process the trauma and rebuild his confidence. At first, he refused to ride the bus. Jennifer drove him every day and Mark picked him up every afternoon. But one morning, 6 weeks after the incident, Tommy announced that he wanted to try riding the bus again. "Are you sure?" Jennifer asked, her voice tight with worry. Tommy nodded. "I can't be scared forever." Ryan arranged to be at the bus stop that morning. He stood with Tommy and Jennifer, Copper sitting beside them as Unit 47 pulled up. The driver was new, a young woman named Kelly, who'd been hired specifically because of her background in childhood education. She smiled at Tommy. "You must be Thomas Hayes. I've heard a lot about you." Tommy looked up at Ryan. "Will you be there?" "At the depot. Every evening," Ryan promised. "Copper and I will check every bus, including yours." Tommy took a deep breath, then climbed the steps. He chose a seat near the front, right behind Kelly, and pressed his face against the window. He waved at his mother, at Ryan, at Copper. The bus pulled away. Jennifer stood on the curb, tears streaming down her face. "He's so brave. He learned it from you," Ryan said. That evening, when Unit 47 returned to the depot, Ryan was there. He watched as Kelly did her check, methodical and thorough. Then he did his own check, with Copper leading the way. The bus was empty, clean, safe. Ryan stood in the aisle, looking at the seat where Tommy had hidden, and he thought about second chances, about how close they'd come to losing a child, about how one dog's instinct had made all the difference. Copper sat beside him, tail wagging, eyes bright. "Good boy," Ryan said. "You saved him. You saved all of us." 2 months after Tommy's rescue, Riverside Elementary held a special assembly. The entire school gathered in the gymnasium. Students, teachers, parents, and members of the community. Principal Martinez stood at the podium, her voice echoing through the space. We're here today to recognize someone very special. Someone who, through his quick thinking and dedication, saved the life of one of our students. Ryan sat in the front row, uncomfortable with the attention. Beside him, Copper lay calmly, his vest bearing the insignia of the Transit Police K9 unit. Officer Ryan Caldwell and his partner Copper discovered Tommy Hayes on the evening of October 15th. Their vigilance and refusal to ignore what seemed like a small concern prevented what could have been an unthinkable tragedy. The audience applauded. Ryan shifted in his seat. Dr. Martinez continued, "But this story isn't just about one rescue, it's about the changes that followed. The new safety protocols, the anti-bullying initiatives, the cameras and panic buttons and training programs. All of these things exist because Officer Caldwell asked the hard questions and refused to accept easy answers." She gestured for Ryan to come forward. Reluctantly he stood, and Copper rose with him. They walked to the podium together, and Dr. Martinez handed Ryan a plaque. "On behalf of the Riverside School District and the families we serve, thank you." The applause was thunderous. Ryan looked out at the crowd and saw Tommy sitting in the third row. The boy was smiling, clapping, his mother's arm around his shoulders. Ryan smiled back. After the assembly, Tommy ran up to him, his backpack bouncing. "Officer Caldwell, can Copper do a trick?" Ryan laughed. "Copper's a working dog, not a circus act." "Please." Ryan looked down at his partner. "Copper, shake." The dog lifted his paw, and Tommy shook it solemnly. Then the boy threw his arms around Copper's neck and whispered something Ryan couldn't hear. Later, as Ryan and Copper walked back to their patrol car, Sarah called. "How was the assembly?" "Embarrassing," Ryan said, "but good. Maya wants to know when you're bringing Copper home. She made him a card." Ryan smiled. "Tell her we'll be home for dinner." He ended the call and looked at Copper. The dog gazed back at him, calm and steady, as always. "You know what you did, don't you?" Ryan said. "You changed everything." Copper's tail wagged. They drove through town, past the school, past the bus depot, past the streets where children played and families gathered. Ryan thought about all the invisible threads that connected them. Trust, vigilance, compassion, courage. And he thought about the boy who'd hidden under a bus seat, too scared to ask for help, too small to fight back, but brave enough to survive. Tommy was in school now, safe and protected. He rode the bus without fear. He laughed with friends. He drew pictures of dogs and dinosaurs and sunny days. He was healing, and so was everyone else. The depot looked different in the fading light. The rows of buses sat like sentinels, their yellow paint glowing in the dusk. Ryan parked and began his evening rounds, Copper leading the way. They checked every bus, every seat, every shadow, because that's what mattered. Not the plaques or the praise or the recognition. What mattered was the work, the vigilance, the refusal to look away. What mattered was showing up every evening and doing the job, even when no one was watching. What mattered was listening to the instinct that said something was wrong, even when everyone else said everything was fine. Ryan finished his check and stood in the quiet lot, watching the stars emerge overhead. Copper sat beside him, patient and loyal. "Ready to go home?" Ryan asked. The dog's tail wagged. They walked to the car together, partners in purpose, bound by something deeper than duty. They walked in trust, in faith, in the quiet knowledge that some heroes wear badges and some walk on four paws.